What's going on, everybody? How you doing? And welcome to another week of our Mythic Plus affixes. My name is Lord PeteyTV. We are here again for another week. This is I'm actually doing this a little later at night. Had a lot of stuff going on today, so I apologize for this coming out a little later than normal. So I just want to say, first of all, make sure you hit that subscribe button here. Make sure you go to our Twitch channel. Make sure you hit follow button there. If you want to support the channel, you can always subscribe to us on Twitch. All right, so let's just talk about this real quick. Now, what our Mythic Plus affixes are this week. Our Mythic Plus affixes are Fortified, Incorporeal, and Sanguine. Now, as we always do, we're going to take a moment and we're going to talk about those. So, okay, let's see. Fortified. All the ads are going to deal more damage, and they have a little more health, which isn't too bad. The Incorporeal is one of those ghosts that spawn up. If you end up not stopping it from casting, it's going to end up putting a debuff on you for damage and also healing. And then the last thing we have is our Sanguine, which is those pools that spawn up behind you. So it's not too bad for this week, in my personal opinion. All right, so we're going to take a moment and we're going to think about that as for our classes. Like we always do, we're going to take 2 seconds and think about it. Okay. So, just let's think about this for a second. Our tanks are going to have a little bit more of a struggle because they're going to take a lot of damage from each individual pull. At least the boss mobs are not going to be that bad, so you're going to be able to rip through those pretty quickly. It might be a little bit longer if you're in the higher keys, but they're not going to be that bad. So not too bad there. The Incorporeal, most classes can stun Incorporeal now. So I don't think that's going to be a real problem to anyone. You're just going to drop a trap. You're just going to stop them. You're going to stop them from moving. You're good to go. So that isn't too bad right there. As for your Sanguine, your melee players, just be very, very careful where you're stepping. You don't want to take that damage that you're going to do. So they're going to have, a little bit of a problem for that. And, it's going to be not too bad. So I think that, the tanks are going to have to keep an eye on the Sanguine when you're moving them back and forth. So that's not too bad there. Now, for your healers are going to have your problems during those big pulls. For instance, the large pulls in front of Freehold and so on and so forth. Pulls of Infusion has a couple of big pulls. Brackenhide, most of that place is going to be very hard because those are a lot of big pulls. So things like that. So let's take a moment and talk about the dungeons now for each class. All right. So Brackenhide Hollow, like I said, you're just going to have to be careful with those large pulls because there's a lot of large pulls there, which means you're going to have a lot of mobs, which means the tanks are going to be taking a lot of damage, which also means they got to be careful of that. So so that's one thing. The other thing you want to end up being careful of is going to be your what's it called? All right, there's going to be your mobs in between. I'm trying to think of the first boss and the second boss. Those are going to be very big pulls. The next ones are going to be between second boss, third boss are going to be big pulls. So those, just keep an eye on, be aware of those. All right, Freehold, you got that first big pull where you're going to take a lot of damage there. You're going to have to be put out. Also, you're going to want to lust that one. You're going to have your Sanguine pools. So if you're a tank, make sure you just do a little circle. Just a little circle. Just keep going around and around and around. So you're going to end up doing that there. So be careful of that. Holes of Infusion, you're going to want to be careful there. In between the second and third boss, you're going to have those really, really tough mobs there. You're going to have tough mobs in the beginning of the dungeon too. Those mob groups are pretty big. Make sure you keep on your interrupts there. So you keep an eye on those. I'm trying to think what else. You're going to have that gauntlet of terribly annoyingness, which shouldn't be too bad, but it'll be all right. And you'll be able to get through that pretty easily. So that's not too bad. Nefarian's Lair, you have a lot of small pulls there. You between the start of the dungeon and the first boss is where you're going to have a lot of your pulls, where you're going to have a lot of your issues. So just be careful of those and make sure that you continue to pull those properly, and you'll be able to go from there. So I think that's going to be your biggest issue, and I think you're going to keep an eye on that. Make sure you get through that, lust that first boss, and hopefully everything works out. Lotharius, that place, in my opinion, is going to be probably your hardest dungeon for the week. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because a lot of those ads already do a crap ton of damage to your players. And on top of doing all of that damage, you're gonna have large pulls. So between the large pulls, you're gonna have that. You're gonna have the what was I gonna say? The large pulls. They're gonna do a lot of damage, so you gotta be really careful there. And you don't have a lot of movement places, so the sanguine pulls are gonna be a problem. So just be very careful of that tanks, because I think I'm talking mostly to tanks this week, because I think you guys are gonna be the ones that are gonna have the most issues. So be very, very careful of that. Next thing is Uldaman. Uldaman, you're not gonna have much places to run with the sanguine. That's where you're gonna have your biggest issue. I think that is gonna be, your problem child. I think you got to be really, really careful of your of what is it called? That first boss bull. Well, I shouldn't even say the first one. The second one, Bromok, because everyone bypasses the three dudes, and then they go to that Bromok, DPS him down, and then they kick back. So just be careful of that. You got to make sure you DPS those guys down pretty nicely. Underrot is Underrot. Everybody is used to the place. Everybody has seen the place. The mobs around that second dude are going to be hard. So just be careful of those guys. I think you got to be careful of that. You got to be careful of the guys at the end. The last pull before the boss, got to be careful of those guys. And really be careful of your sanguine pools, because your sanguine pools are going to be really, really, tough to deal with, because even though that dungeon looks big, you don't have much movement and places to go. You got to be really, really careful of that. And then Vortex Pinnacle is the last dungeon we're going to talk about. Vortex Pinnacle isn't too bad, in my opinion. I think that, between the open areas, because Sanguine, you can move them around pretty easy. Incorporals are, I'm not even really calling them a deal. I mean, you can just see, everybody can see them. The only problem is that there are a couple of bosses where people that throw, like hunters, when they throw traps on the ground, you got to be careful because of mobs. Like that second boss, they're useless there. I can't CC anything, so you got to be really careful. But yeah, that's pretty, just got to be careful of the mobs there. The first group of mobs between the start of the entrance to the first boss. And then, the stars, those dudes, the big dragons, the ones with the green circles, those guys you got to be careful of. Those guys do just a lot of damage to the tanks. So be very, very careful of those. And I'm talking specifically about the higher keys too. So, be careful of that. So, all right. So that's all I can think of right now. Keep an eye out. We're going to be putting out a couple of videos. I played a bunch of games, for demo. So we're going to get those recorded, done, put together, and then I'm going to put it out there. Now, remember, we're streaming every single day, Monday to Friday. We try to be on, around between 3 and 4, and then we go as late as 11 o'clock, sometimes a little later, depends upon what's going on. I'd love to see people online. It is summertime for my wife and I. Well, I shouldn't say for me, but for her. So we end up trying to spend some time together. My son, he loves spending time with us, so we're trying to get that together. So just keep an eye on that. So, all right, love you all. Dream big, keep gaming. Have a fantastic rest of your week. I hope you all had a great vault. Mine was sockets. Anyway, so love you all. See you later. Bye, everybody.